All right, let's jump straight into this explainer and look at a machine we completely take for granted, but that literally built our modern world. I mean, when we talk about human history, we're usually focused on empires or wars or the internet. But there's a mechanical marvel sitting right outside in your driveway that has entirely reshaped the geography of our planet and the structure of our daily lives. Today, we're exploring the epic, kind of messy, and absolutely fascinating history of the automobile.
So, tell me, how did you get to work today? Or, for that matter, how did that package you ordered yesterday magically end up on your doorstep this morning? It's just so easy to forget that basically everything about our fast-paced modern life relies completely on this one specific mode of transportation. I really want you to hold on to that personal connection as we travel back in time, because the convenience you experienced this morning, that is a very, very recent luxury.
Because think about this. Just a little over a century ago, if you wanted to go anywhere, you were relying on literal horsepower. Try to picture it. You aren't listening to the smooth hum of an engine, you're hearing the clop of hooves. The streets weren't paved with asphalt. They were deeply rutted, unpaved, and usually just filled with mud. And let's be totally honest about the environment here. The streets smelled like manure. By the late 19th century, cities were hitting an absolute breaking point with animal waste. We desperately needed an upgrade, and a few obsessed inventors were about to deliver a massive global revolution.
Let's get right into Section 1, the horseless carriage, or early experiments in steam and gas.
Believe it or not, the story doesn't actually start with the rumble of gasoline. It starts with the hiss of steam, way back in 1672. A Jesuit missionary named Ferdinand Verbest built this tiny steam-powered toy for the Emperor of China, which is arguably the very first working automobile. Fast forward to 1769, and a Frenchman named Nicolas Joseph Cugnot built a massive, clunky steam-powered artillery tractor. It was terribly heavy, incredibly slow, and famously crashed straight into a brick wall, giving us the world's very first car accident. But you know, steam was just way too bulky for everyday personal travel. The real turning point, the true birth of the modern car, happens in 1886. Over in Germany, Carl Benz patented the Benz Patent-Motorwagen. It was a three-wheeled machine with a one-cylinder engine running on a gasoline derivative, a total masterpiece of engineering.
Now, Carl Benz was a perfectionist. He had this incredible invention, but he was actually really hesitant to market it. Well, enter his wife, Bertha Benz. In August of 1888, without even telling him, she packed up her sons and took the car on a historic 60-mile road trip just to prove to the world that it worked. And get this, when the fuel line clogged, she cleared it with her hat pin. When a wire shorted out, she insulated it with her garter. And when the wooden brakes started to fail, she literally had a cobbler nail leather onto them, basically inventing brake pads right on the fly. Talk about a masterclass in marketing new tech. But getting a car to just work was only the first hurdle. The new dilemma was, how on earth do we get these machines out to the masses?
Which brings us to Section 2, the Ford Assembly Revolution, democratizing the road.
So by the early 1900s, during what's called the brass era, there were actually hundreds of automakers out there. The problem? Cars were these incredibly fragile luxury novelties built exclusively for the ultra-rich. If you weren't wealthy, you were still walking or riding a horse. The absolute game changer is how Henry Ford solved this exclusivity problem. Other innovators like Ransom E. Olds pioneered the basic assembly line, but Ford perfected it. Before 1913, workers moved around a stationary car, and it took about 12 hours to build just one. Ford completely flipped the script. He put the chassis on a moving conveyor belt, and the workers stayed put. The result? Production time plummeted from 12 hours down to an astonishing 93 minutes per car.
And to put the economic shockwave of that efficiency into perspective, when the Model T first launched in 1908, it cost around $850. But after that moving assembly line got going, Ford was able to slash the price by nearly 50%, bringing it all the way down to roughly $300. He made it the first mass affordable car in human history. He didn't just build a vehicle, he democratized the road, literally handing the middle class the keys to personal freedom. And of course, once everyone could get their hands on a car, the focus naturally shifted from just basic function to incredible form.
That takes us to Section 3, the Golden Era: style, speed, and status.
Throughout the 1920s and 30s, the car really grew up. We finally ditched those drafty open-top carriages and moved into fully enclosed vehicles with trunks, heaters, and these stunning Art Deco designs. The car became a lifestyle, a real status symbol. Then, after World War II, the industry just exploded, fueled by the massive suburban boom. This was the era of pontoon styling, which is that defining post-war design trend where those old-fashioned side running boards completely vanished and the fenders were seamlessly integrated right into the car's body. The vehicles of the 1950s grew larger, flashier, and were absolutely drenched in chrome. The highway basically became a runway.
And man, then we hit the 1960s. It became all about speed, attitude, and the muscle car. Driving wasn't just about getting from point A to point B anymore, or showing off your chrome. It was about the roar of the engine and the thrill of the ride. The launch of the massively successful Ford Mustang in 1964 kicked off the whole pony car era. It was aggressive, it was fast, and it injected this amazing, rebellious, youthful energy straight into the automotive industry. But as you can probably guess, the endless party of heavy metal and cheap gas couldn't last forever.
Moving on to Section 4, Shocks and Global Shifts, the 1970s Reality Check.
The 1970s hit the automotive world like a brick wall. In 1973, an oil crisis caused fuel prices to just absolutely skyrocket almost overnight. Suddenly, waiting in huge lines at the gas station was the new normal. And on top of that, new government regulations demanded much stricter emissions controls and vastly better safety features. Those heavy, gas-guzzling American muscle cars suddenly looked a bit like dinosaurs next to the fuel-efficient, super reliable Japanese imports flooding the market from companies like Toyota and Honda. Consumers realized they desperately needed practicality, which shot cars like the Toyota Corolla straight to the top of bestseller lists all over the globe.
As what consumers needed shifted and we rolled toward the late 20th century, the structure of the standard family vehicle went through its own fascinating evolution. Step 1 was the classic wood-paneled station wagon of the mid-century. Step 2, moving into the 80s and 90s, saw families flocking to the ultra-practical minivan. And finally, Step 3 brings us to the undisputed kings of the modern road, the SUV and the crossover, which perfectly blend the space of a minivan with the rugged, adventurous appeal of a truck. And that brings us right to the modern era, where mechanical linkages are rapidly being swapped out for computers on wheels.
Here is Section 5, the electric resurgence, history repeating itself.
When you compare an original 1888 Flocken Electrowagen to a cutting-edge modern electric vehicle like the Tesla Model Y, you uncover this absolutely fascinating full-circle narrative. A lot of people have no idea that back in the late 19th century, electric cars were actually incredibly popular. They were quiet, they were easy to start. It was only when gasoline engines vastly outpaced them in driving range that EVs kind of faded away. But today, thanks to massive breakthroughs in battery tech and very real environmental concerns, the electric car is back to reclaim the throne. And we aren't just talking about some small niche market here. In 2023, the Tesla Model Y made history. It didn't just become the best-selling electric car, it became the best-selling vehicle of any kind worldwide. The market dominance of electric power isn't just the future anymore, it is literally the absolute present.
So, from a clunky steam-powered tractor crashing into a brick wall to Carl Benz's three-wheeled tricycle, all the way to the autonomous electric supercomputers we're driving today, the automobile is really a mirror, reflecting our own human drive for progress. I mean, this machine has done so much more than just transport us. It has literally dictated the layout of our sprawling cities, it's defined our cultures, and it has granted us the ultimate freedom to just explore the world on our own terms. Every single time you start an engine or push a power button, you're tapping into a century-old legacy of human ingenuity.
So, I want to leave you with one final thought at the end of this explainer. What is the next road trip? And I don't just mean for you this weekend, but for all of us as a society. Where does human transport actually go from here? As vehicles get smarter, cleaner, and maybe even completely autonomous, how are they going to continue to reshape our lives in the next century? Think about that the next time you hit the road. Thanks so much